A cleaning lady finds a man sobbing alone in a dark, empty office late at night, gently comforts him, never imagining he's the powerful CEO who will soon get down on one knee. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The rhythmic swoosh of Elena's mop against the polished marble floor was the only sound that pierced the silence of Vertex Tower's 42nd floor. At 11:37 p.m., the financial district of downtown was a ghost town of empty suits and hollow corridors. Elena Vasquez preferred it this way. The solitude of nighttime cleaning gave her space to think, to dream, to exist without the sideways glances from daytime employees who looked through her as if she were as transparent as the glass windows she polished to perfection. Tonight was particularly quiet. Most of the executives had fled early for the long weekend. Memorial Day meant barbecues and beach houses for them. For Elena, it meant time and a half pay and the chance to pick up extra shifts. At 32, with 2 community college courses per semester and her mother's mounting medical bills, every extra dollar mattered. She hummed softly to herself as she rolled her cleaning cart down the hallway toward the executive suite. Normally, this section was cleaned last, a courtesy to the C-level employees who often worked late. But tonight, the lights were off, and the motion sensors hadn't triggered in hours according to the security desk. Elena had decided to tackle it first. She swiped her access card and pushed open the heavy glass door leading to the executive area. The open-concept workspace was eerily still, the Manhattan skyline creating a glittering backdrop through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Moonlight cast long shadows across desks that during daylight hours would be bustling with assistants and junior executives. Elena flipped on just enough lights to work by, no sense in wasting electricity, something her mother had drilled into her since childhood. As she made her way through the maze of expensive furniture, Elena noticed a soft glow coming from beneath the frosted glass door of the corner office. Strange. Security had sworn everyone was gone. Maybe someone had left a desk lamp on. The cleaning company's policy was clear: enter all rooms. But if personal items were out, only clean the accessible areas. Don't move papers, don't touch computers, don't make it obvious someone had been there. With practiced efficiency, Elena knocked gently on the door. "Housekeeping," she called out, not expecting a response. The silence that followed confirmed her assumption. She inserted her master key and pushed the door open. The office was immense, nearly the size of her entire apartment. Minimalist furniture in muted grays and blacks created a powerful aesthetic. A massive desk faced the door, positioned so that whoever sat behind it would have the spectacular city view at their back. But it wasn't the opulent space that stopped Elena in her tracks. It was the sound, a muffled, broken intake of breath that she recognized immediately. Someone was crying. Her eyes adjusted to the dim lighting and she finally saw him. A man sitting on the floor in the far corner of the office, his back against the wall, knees drawn up to his chest. His face was buried in his hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Elena froze, her hand still on the door handle. She should leave, give him privacy. This wasn't her business. But something about the raw vulnerability of the moment, the absolute desolation in his posture, made her hesitate. "I'm sorry," she said softly, already beginning to back away. "I didn't realize anyone was still here. I'll come back later." The man's head snapped up, clearly startled by her voice. In the low light, Elena could make out a face that appeared to be in its early 40s. Strong jawline, slightly disheveled dark hair with distinguished touches of silver at the temples. His eyes, red-rimmed and swollen, reflected a pain so acute it was almost physical. "No, His voice cracked, and he cleared his throat. "I should go. This is your time to clean." He made no move to stand, as if the weight pressing down on him was too heavy to bear. Elena should have nodded and closed the door, should have moved on to the next office and given him time to compose himself. Instead, she stepped fully into the room, letting the door close behind her. Are you okay?" A foolish question. Obviously he wasn't, but it was all she could think to say. He let out a hollow laugh that contained no humor. "No, not really." He ran a hand through his hair, leaving it more disheveled than before. "But don't worry about it. Please, just pretend you didn't see me like this." Elena hesitated, then made a decision she couldn't fully explain even to herself. She set her cleaning caddy down by the door and walked over to the sleek kitchenette in the corner of the office. She opened a few cabinets until she found what she was looking for, a glass. She filled it with water from the filtered tap and walked over to where the man sat, crouching down to his level. "Here," she said, offering him the water. "My mother always says water helps when the world gets too heavy." He looked at her with surprise, as if he couldn't quite process this small act of kindness. After a moment, he accepted the glass, his fingers brushing against hers. "Thank you," he said, his voice steadier now. He took a long drink, then set the glass down on the floor beside him. "You didn't have to do that." Elena shrugged. "It's just water." "No, I mean, you didn't have to be kind. Most people would have backed away from the crazy man crying in his office at midnight." "It's only 11:45, Elena replied with a small smile. "And you don't seem crazy to me, just sad. There's a difference." His eyes, which she now noticed were an intense shade of gray, studied her face. There was something almost unsettling about his gaze, like he was trying to solve a complex equation. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. "Elena. Elena Vasquez." "Elena," he repeated as if testing the sound of it. "I'm Alex." He hesitated slightly before giving his name, and Elena wondered if he was using a pseudonym, embarrassed to be caught in such a vulnerable moment. "Nice to meet you, Alex, though I wish it were under better circumstances." He nodded, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "So do I." An awkward silence fell between them. Elena knew she should get back to work, but something kept her rooted to the spot. Perhaps it was the fact that this man, Alex, looked so utterly lost, so completely alone. It reminded her of her mother in the hospital after her diagnosis, when the weight of the world had seemed to crush her normally indomitable spirit. "Do you want to talk about it?" Elena offered, surprising herself. Sometimes it helps to tell a stranger, no judgment, no history, just listening ears. Alex studied her for a long moment. "Why would you care about my problems?" The question wasn't accusatory, just genuinely confused, which somehow made it sadder. Elena sat down on the floor, smoothing her gray uniform skirt over her knees. "Because you're a human being who's hurting. That's reason enough, isn't it?" He blinked, seemingly taken aback by her answer. Then, to her surprise, he began to speak. "Today was my father's birthday, the first one since he died." His voice was low, controlled, but Elena could hear the pain beneath the surface. "He built this company from nothing, sacrificed everything for it, and now it's mine, and I'm destroying everything he created." "I'm sure that's not true," Elena said gently. "It is." His tone was flat, brooking no argument. "The board wants me out. Our stock has plummeted. The merger I pushed for is falling apart, and the worst part?" His voice cracked again. "The worst part is that he warned me. He told me exactly what would happen if I pursued this path, and I ignored him because I thought I knew better." Elena was quiet for a moment, considering her words carefully. "My father died when I was 17, she finally said. "He was a construction worker, fell from the 12th floor of a building that wasn't up to code. After he died, I found out that he'd been saving for years to send me to college. Every extra penny tucked away in an account I never knew about." Alex watched her, his own grief momentarily overshadowed by interest in her story. "It wasn't enough," Elena continued. "Not nearly enough for a full education. I was so angry at him for a while. angry that he'd dreamed too small, that he hadn't saved more, worked harder. Can you imagine? She shook her head at her younger self. I was mad at my dead father for not leaving me more money. What changed? Alex asked. I realized that he gave what he could, that his dream for me was born out of love, not obligation, and that holding on to anger at someone who only wanted the best for me was poisoning myself. She met his eyes directly. Your father trusted you with his company. He must have believed in you, even if he disagreed with your decisions. Alex was silent for a long moment. You didn't know him. He was complicated. All parents are, Elena said with a small shrug. Doesn't mean they don't love us. As they talked, the rigid line of Alex's shoulders had gradually relaxed. He no longer looked like he might shatter if touched. Elena felt a strange sense of accomplishment at this small improvement. I should let you get back to work, he said, making a move to stand. Elena rose as well, brushing off her uniform. Are you going to be okay? Yes, he said, with what appeared to be genuine surprise at the realization. I think I will be. Thank you, Elena, for the water and the perspective. Any time, she said, then added with a small smile, well, Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. at least. That drew a real laugh from him, a warm sound that transformed his face. Elena was struck by how handsome he was when not consumed by grief. Not that it mattered. Men like him didn't see women like her, not really. She was just a momentary curiosity, a random kindness in the night. Good night, Alex, she said, moving back toward her cleaning caddy. Good night, Elena, he replied, his voice carrying an odd note of finality, as if he were saying goodbye to more than just the moment. Elena continued her rounds, finishing the executive floor before moving down to the 41st. Yet, as the night wore on, her thoughts kept returning to the man with the sad gray eyes and the weight of legacy on his shoulders. She wondered if he'd found peace, if her words had helped at all, or if she'd merely been a brief distraction from his pain. By the time her shift ended and the first hints of dawn were breaking over the city, Elena had almost convinced herself that the encounter would fade from her memory, just another strange moment in the liminal space of nighttime work. She had no way of knowing how completely wrong she was. Elena almost didn't recognize him 3 days later. Standing in the middle of the company cafeteria in crisp navy suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, Alexander Chen looked nothing like the broken man she'd found on the office floor. His back was straight, his chin raised, as he conversed with a group of executives who seemed to hang on his every word. Power and authority radiated from him like heat from asphalt in summer. She'd been collecting trash from the cafeteria tables when she spotted him. Elena immediately ducked her head, focusing intently on her work. Daytime shifts weren't her usual, but one of the regular cleaners had called in sick and Elena needed the money. So here she was, invisible as always to the bustling corporate world around her. Except this time, she desperately wanted to stay that way. What had she been thinking, sitting on the floor with him like they were equals, offering life advice to a man who clearly inhabited a different stratosphere? Heat crept up her neck at the memory. He probably saw their interaction as a moment of weakness, an embarrassment best forgotten. She methodically emptied the trash cans, keeping her back to the executive gathering. With any luck, she'd finish and be out of there before... Elena? The voice came from directly behind her. She closed her eyes briefly, caught between mortification and an inexplicable flutter in her chest. Slowly, she turned around. Up close, Alexander Chen was even more intimidating in his element. His suit was impeccably tailored to his tall frame, his dark hair perfectly styled, those penetrating gray eyes now clear and focused. Only the faintest shadows beneath them hinted at the emotional turmoil she'd witnessed. "Mr. Chen," she replied, acutely aware of the curious glances from nearby tables. No one would expect the CEO to know a member of the cleaning staff by name. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, quickly replaced by a wry smile. "So, you know who I am." "I looked you up," she admitted. "After that night, it wasn't hard to figure out." Alexander Chen, 39 years old, CEO of Vertex Innovations for the past 2 years following the death of his father, Chen Wei, the company's founder, named one of the 40 under 40 business leaders by Forbes. Bachelor's degree from MIT, MBA from Stanford, divorced, no children, estimated net worth $320 million. In other words, they might as well be from different planets. He glanced at the executives he'd left behind, who were now openly staring, then back to Elena. "Do you have a moment? I'd like to speak with you privately." Elena's grip tightened on her trash bag. "I'm working, Mr. Chen." "Alex," he corrected automatically. "And I'm technically your boss's boss's boss, so I think I can authorize a short break." She couldn't argue with that logic. Reluctantly, she set down her trash bag and followed him to a quiet corner of the cafeteria. "I've been wanting to thank you properly," he said once they were out of earshot, "for your kindness the other night." "It was nothing," Elena said, uncomfortable with his gratitude. "Anyone would have done the same." "No, they wouldn't have," he countered firmly. "Most people would have backed away slowly from the crazy man crying in his office, remember?" Despite herself, Elena smiled at his callback to their conversation. "Well, like I said, you weren't crazy, just sad. Thanks to you, less sad now." He studied her face with that same intense focus she remembered from their first meeting. "I've been reflecting on what you said about your father. It helped more than you know." "I'm glad," Elena said, genuinely pleased that her words had made a difference. A slightly awkward silence fell between them. Elena was hyper-aware of the cleaning uniform she wore, the plastic gloves tucked into her pocket, the curious stares still directed their way. "I should get back to work," she said finally. "Of course." Alex nodded but made no move to leave. Instead, he pulled a business card from his pocket and handed it to her. "My personal number is on the back. I'd like to take you to dinner, as a proper thank you." Elena stared at the card as if it might bite her. "That's really not necessary, Mr. Chen." "Alex," he insisted, "and maybe it's not necessary, but I'd like to. I don't often meet people who see past everything." He gestured vaguely at his suit, at the trappings of wealth and power that surrounded him. Before Elena could formulate a response, a tall woman in a sharp black pantsuit approached them. "Alex, the Nakamura team is waiting in the conference room," she said, her eyes darting curiously between them. "I'll be right there, Vivian," he replied, not taking his eyes off Elena. "Think about it," he added softly before turning to follow his assistant. Elena watched him go, the business card a weight in her palm. What had just happened? Was Alexander Chen, billionaire CEO, man with the world at his fingertips, asking her on a date? No, she corrected herself, not a date. A thank you dinner. A charity gesture to make himself feel better about his moment of vulnerability. She should throw the card away. Instead, she carefully tucked it into her pocket and returned to her trash collecting, trying to ignore the speculative looks from employees who had witnessed the exchange. By the time her shift ended at 4, the rumor mill was already churning. Elena kept her head down, changed back into her street clothes, and hurried out of the building. The late May air was warm and humid as she walked to the subway station. 3 blocks from Vertex Tower, she pulled out the business card again and examined it. Heavy, cream-colored cardstock, embossed with the Vertex logo. Alexander Chen, Chief Executive Officer. On the back, written in precise blue ink, a phone number. "This is insane," she muttered to herself, tucking the card away again. She wouldn't call. What would they even talk about? What would be the point? Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Don't forget to pick up my prescription." Reality check. This was her life. Night shifts, community college, caring for her mother. Not fancy dinners with CEOs who probably saw her as some kind of curiosity, a momentary distraction from their privileged existence. The subway was crowded with the early rush of commuters. Elena found a spot to stand, holding the overhead rail as the train lurched forward. Her thoughts drifted back to the night she'd found Alex on his office floor. The raw pain in his eyes had been so genuine, so human. For a brief moment, there had been no hierarchy between them, just two people connecting over shared experiences of loss. But daylight had restored the natural order. He was Alexander Chen, and she was the woman who emptied his trash. By the time Elena reached her stop in Queens, she had almost convinced herself to forget the whole thing. She stopped at the pharmacy for her mother's medication, then climbed the 4 flights of stairs to their small apartment. "Mama, I'm home," she called, dropping her keys on the small table by the door. "In here, mija?" her mother responded from the living room. Constanza Vasquez sat in her usual spot on the worn sofa, a half-completed quilt spread across her lap despite the warmth of the day. At 56, Connie looked a decade older, her once vibrant face now gaunt, her thick black hair streaked with gray. Multiple sclerosis had ravaged her body over the past 5 years, stealing her career as a seamstress, her independence, and often her spirits, but never her deft hands or creative eye. "How was your shift?" Connie asked, setting aside her quilting to accept the medication Elena handed her. "Fine," Elena replied automatically, then hesitated. "Actually, something strange happened." As she recounted her interaction with Alex, leaving out their first encounter at his request, her mother's eyes grew wider. "The CEO knows your name?" Connie exclaimed. "And asked you to dinner?" "It's not like that, Mama. He's just being nice because I helped him with something." "What kind of something?" Connie asked suspiciously. "I can't say. I promised." Elena busied herself with organizing the mail, avoiding her mother's penetrating stare. Connie picked up her quilting again, her nimble fingers resuming their work. "Well, you should go." Elena's head snapped up. "What? No, absolutely not." "Why not? When was the last time you did something for yourself, Elena?" "All you do is work and study and take care of me." "Because those are my responsibilities," Elena countered. "And going to dinner with Alexander Chen it's not even in the realm of possibility. We have nothing in common, except that you helped him with this mysterious something, and he was moved enough to seek you out and thank you personally." Connie raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like you have at least one thing in common: humanity." Elena shook her head, exasperated. "It would be awkward and uncomfortable. What would we even talk about?" "You'll never know if you don't go," her mother replied simply. "Besides, you said it's just a thank-you dinner, not a marriage proposal." "Mama, I'm just saying, life offers unexpected gifts sometimes. Only a fool refuses to even open them." Elena sighed, knowing that once her mother got an idea in her head, there was no dissuading her. "I'll think about it," she conceded, mainly to end the conversation. But over the next 2 days, as Elena attended her community college classes and worked her regular night shifts, thankfully not on the executive floor, the idea continued to nag at her. She found herself taking out Alex's card, staring at the number, then putting it away again. It was silly. She was being silly. The rational part of her brain knew exactly how this would play out. Best case scenario: an uncomfortable dinner where they struggled to find common ground, followed by relieved goodbyes and a return to their separate worlds. Worst case: she somehow embarrassed herself and then had to live with the mortification while still cleaning his company's offices. Still, by Friday afternoon, as Elena prepared for her night shift, something in her rebelled against the safe, predictable course. Yes, calling him was probably a mistake, but maybe, just maybe, her mother was right. Life rarely offered unexpected gifts to women like her. Was she really going to refuse even the chance to unwrap this one? Before she could talk herself out of it, Elena pulled out her phone and dialed the number on the back of the business card. She half expected it to go to voicemail or to be answered by an assistant. Instead, after 2 rings, she heard his voice. "This is Alex Chen." Elena's heartbeat quickened. "Hi, it's Elena. Elena Vasquez, from the other night." A brief pause, then, "Elena, I'm glad you called. Does this mean you'll have dinner with me?" His direct approach took her by surprise. I guess it does, but I should warn you, I don't exactly fit in at the kinds of restaurants someone like you probably goes to." "Someone like me?" She could hear the amusement in his voice. "I eat food, just like everyone else, but point taken. How about you let me worry about the restaurant and you just tell me when you're free?" Elena glanced at her calendar. "I have Monday night off," she said, immediately wondering if she was making a huge mistake. "Monday it is. I'll pick you up at 7? And just like that, Elena Vasquez had a dinner date with the CEO of Vertex Innovations. She gave him her address in a daze, hung up and stared at her phone, wondering what alternate universe she had just slipped into, and what on earth she was going to wear. Elena almost didn't recognize him 3 days later, standing in the middle of the company cafeteria in crisp navy suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Alexander Chen looked nothing like the broken man she'd found on the office floor. His back was straight, his chin raised, as he conversed with a group of executives who seemed to hang on his every word. Power and authority radiated from him like heat from asphalt in summer. She'd been collecting trash from the cafeteria tables when she spotted him. Elena immediately ducked her head, focusing intently on her work. Daytime shifts weren't her usual, but one of the regular cleaners had called in sick and Elena needed the money. So here she was, invisible as always to the bustling corporate world around her. Except this time, she desperately wanted to stay that way. What had she been thinking, sitting on the floor with him like they were equals, offering life advice to a man who clearly inhabited a different stratosphere? Heat crept up her neck at the memory. He probably saw their interaction as a moment of weakness, an embarrassment best forgotten. She methodically emptied the trash cans, keeping her back to the executive gathering. With any luck, she'd finish and be out of there before— "Elena?" The voice came from directly behind her. She closed her eyes briefly, caught between mortification and an inexplicable flutter in her chest. Slowly she turned around. Up close, Alexander Chen was even more intimidating in his element. His suit was impeccably tailored to his tall frame, his dark hair perfectly styled, those penetrating gray eyes now clear and focused. Only the faintest shadows beneath them hinted at the emotional turmoil she'd witnessed. "Mr. Chen?" she replied, acutely aware of the curious glances from nearby tables. No one would expect the CEO to know a member of the cleaning staff by name. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, quickly replaced by a wry smile. "So you know who I am." "I looked you up," she admitted. "After that night, it wasn't hard to figure out." Alexander Chen, 39 years old, CEO of Vertex Innovations for the past 2 years following the death of his father, Chen Wei, the company's founder. Named one of the 40 under 40 business leaders by Forbes. Bachelor's degree from MIT, MBA from Stanford, divorced, no children, estimated net worth $320 million. In other words, they might as well be from different planets. He glanced at the executives he'd left behind, who were now openly staring, then back to Elena. "Do you have a moment? I'd like to speak with you privately." Elena's grip tightened on her trash bag. "I'm working, Mr. Chen." "Alex," he corrected automatically, "and I'm technically your boss's boss's boss, so I think I can authorize a short break." She couldn't argue with that logic. Reluctantly, she set down her trash bag and followed him to a quiet corner of the cafeteria. "I've been wanting to thank you properly," he said once they were out of earshot, "for your kindness the other night." "It was nothing," Elena said, uncomfortable with his gratitude. "Anyone would have done the same." "No, they wouldn't have," he countered firmly. "Most people would have backed away slowly from the crazy man crying in his office, remember?" Despite herself, Elena smiled at his callback to their conversation. Well, like I said, you weren't crazy, just sad. Thanks to you, less sad now. He studied her face with that same intense focus she remembered from their first meeting. I've been reflecting on what you said about your father. It helped more than you know. I'm glad, Elena said, genuinely pleased that her words had made a difference. A slightly awkward silence fell between them. Elena was hyper-aware of the cleaning uniform she wore, the plastic gloves tucked into her pocket, the curious stares still directed their way. I should get back to work, she said finally. Of course. Alex nodded, but made no move to leave. Instead, he pulled a business card from his pocket and handed it to her. My personal number is on the back. I'd like to take you to dinner as a proper thank you. Elena stared at the card as if it might bite her. That's really not necessary, Mr. Chen. Alex, he insisted. And maybe it's not necessary, but I'd like to. I don't often meet people who see past everything. He gestured vaguely at his suit, at the trappings of wealth and power that surrounded him. Before Elena could formulate a response, a tall woman in a sharp black pantsuit approached them. Alex, the Nakamura team is waiting in the conference room, she said, her eyes darting curiously between them. I'll be right there, Vivian, he replied, not taking his eyes off Elena. Think about it, he added softly, before turning to follow his assistant. Elena watched him go, the business card await in her palm. What had just happened? Was Alexander Chen, billionaire CEO, man with the world at his fingertips, asking her on a date? No, she corrected herself. Not a date, a thank you dinner. A charity gesture to make himself feel better about his moment of vulnerability. She should throw the card away. Instead, she carefully tucked it into her pocket and returned to her trash collecting, trying to ignore the speculative looks from employees who had witnessed the exchange. By the time her shift ended at 4, the rumor mill was already churning. Elena kept her head down, changed back into her street clothes, and hurried out of the building. The late May air was warm and humid as she walked to the subway station. 3 blocks from Vertex Tower, she pulled out the business card again and examined it. Heavy, cream-colored cardstock, embossed with the Vertex logo. Alexander Chen, Chief Executive Officer. On the back, written in precise blue ink, a phone number. This is insane, she muttered to herself, tucking the card away again. She wouldn't call. What would they even talk about? What would be the point? Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Don't forget to pick up my prescription. Reality check. This was her life. Night shifts, community college, caring for her mother, not fancy dinners with CEOs who probably saw her as some kind of curiosity, a momentary distraction from their privileged existence. The subway was crowded with the early rush of commuters. Elena found a spot to stand, holding the overhead rail as the train lurched forward. Her thoughts drifted back to the night she'd found Alex on his office floor. The raw pain in his eyes had been so genuine, so human. For a brief moment, there had been no hierarchy between them, just 2 people connecting over shared experiences of loss. But daylight had restored the natural order. He was Alexander Chen, and she was the woman who emptied his trash. By the time Elena reached her stop in Queens, she had almost convinced herself to forget the whole thing. She stopped at the pharmacy for her mother's medication, then climbed the 4 flights of stairs to their small apartment. "Mama, I'm home," she called, dropping her keys on the small table by the door. "In here, mija," her mother responded from the living room. Constanza Vasquez sat in her usual spot on the worn sofa, a half-completed quilt spread across her lap despite the warmth of the day. At 56, Connie looked a decade older, her once vibrant face now gaunt, her thick black hair streaked with gray. Multiple sclerosis had ravaged her body over the past 5 years, stealing her career as a seamstress, her independence, and often her spirits, but never her deft hands or creative eye. "How was your shift?" Connie asked, setting aside her quilting to accept the medication Elena handed her. "Fine," Elena replied automatically, then hesitated. Actually, something strange happened. As she recounted her interaction with Alex, leaving out their first encounter at his request, her mother's eyes grew wider. "The CEO knows your name?" Connie exclaimed. "And asked you to dinner?" "It's not like that, Mama. He's just being nice because I helped him with something." "What kind of something?" Connie asked suspiciously. "I can't say, I promised." Elena busied herself with organizing the mail, avoiding her mother's penetrating stare. Connie picked up her quilting again, her nimble fingers resuming their work. "Well, you should go." Elena's head snapped up. "What? No, absolutely not. Why not? When was the last time you did something for yourself, Elena? All you do is work and study and take care of me." "Because those are my responsibilities," Elena countered. "And going to dinner with Alexander Chen it's not even in the realm of possibility. We have nothing in common. Except that you helped him with this mysterious something, and he was moved enough to seek you out and thank you personally." Connie raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like you have at least one thing in common: humanity." Elena shook her head, exasperated. "It would be awkward and uncomfortable. What would we even talk about?" "You'll never know if you don't go," her mother replied simply. "Besides, you said it's just a thank you dinner, not a marriage proposal." "Mama! I'm just saying life offers unexpected gifts sometimes. Only a fool refuses to even open them." Elena sighed, knowing that once her mother got an idea in her head, there was no dissuading her. "I'll think about it," she conceded, mainly to end the conversation. But over the next 2 days, as Elena attended her community college classes and worked her regular night shifts, thankfully, not on the executive floor, the idea continued to nag at her. She found herself taking out Alex's card, staring at the number, then putting it away again. It was silly. She was being silly. The rational part of her brain knew exactly how this would play out. Best-case scenario: an uncomfortable dinner where they struggled to find common ground, followed by relieved goodbyes and a return to their separate worlds. Worst case, she somehow embarrassed herself and then had to live with the mortification while still cleaning his company's offices. Still, by Friday afternoon, as Elena prepared for her night shift, something in her rebelled against the safe, predictable course. Yes, calling him was probably a mistake, but maybe, just maybe, her mother was right. Life rarely offered unexpected gifts to women like her. Was she really going to refuse even the chance to unwrap this one? Before she could talk herself out of it, Elena pulled out her phone and dialed the number on the back of the business card. She half expected it to go to voicemail or to be answered by an assistant. Instead, after 2 rings, she heard his voice. "This is Alex Chen." Elena's heartbeat quickened. "Hi, it's Elena. Elena Vasquez, from the other night." A brief pause, then, "Elena, I'm glad you called. Does this mean you'll have dinner with me?" His direct approach took her by surprise. I guess it does, but I should warn you, I don't exactly fit in at the kinds of restaurants someone like you probably goes to." "Someone like me?" She could hear the amusement in his voice. "I eat food, just like everyone else, but point taken. How about you let me worry about the restaurant and you just tell me when you're free?" Elena glanced at her calendar. "I have Monday night off," she said, immediately wondering if she was making a huge mistake. "Monday it is. I'll pick you up at 7? And just like that, Elena Vasquez had a dinner date with the CEO of Vertex Innovations. She gave him her address in a daze, hung up and stared at her phone, wondering what alternate universe she had just slipped into, and what on earth she was going to wear. Elena almost didn't recognize him 3 days later, standing in the middle of the company cafeteria in crisp navy suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Alexander Chen looked nothing like the broken man she'd found on the office floor. His back was straight, his chin raised, as he conversed with a group of executives who seemed to hang on his every word. Power and authority radiated from him like heat from asphalt in summer. She'd been collecting trash from the cafeteria tables when she spotted him. Elena immediately ducked her head, focusing intently on her work. Daytime shifts weren't her usual, but one of the regular cleaners had called in sick and Elena needed the money. So here she was, invisible as always to the bustling corporate world around her. Except this time, she desperately wanted to stay that way. What had she been thinking, sitting on the floor with him like they were equals, offering life advice to a man who clearly inhabited a different stratosphere? Heat crept up her neck at the memory. He probably saw their interaction as a moment of weakness, an embarrassment best forgotten. She methodically emptied the trash cans, keeping her back to the executive gathering. With any luck, she'd finish and be out of there before… "Elena?" The voice came from directly behind her. She closed her eyes briefly, caught between mortification and an inexplicable flutter in her chest. Slowly she turned around. Up close, Alexander Chen was even more intimidating in his element. His suit was impeccably tailored to his tall frame, his dark hair perfectly styled, those penetrating gray eyes now clear and focused. Only the faintest shadows beneath them hinted at the emotional turmoil she'd witnessed. "Mr. Chen?" she replied, acutely aware of the curious glances from nearby tables. No one would expect the CEO to know a member of the cleaning staff by name. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, quickly replaced by a wry smile. "So you know who I am." "I looked you up," she admitted. "After that night, it wasn't hard to figure out. Alexander Chen, 39 years old, CEO of Vertex Innovations for the past 2 years following the death of his father, Chen Wei, the company's founder. Named one of the 40 under 40 business leaders by Forbes. Bachelor's degree from MIT, MBA from Stanford. Divorced, no children, estimated net worth $320 million. In other words, they might as well be from different planets." He glanced at the executives he'd left behind, who were now openly staring, then back to Elena. "Do you have a moment? I'd like to speak with you privately." Elena's grip tightened on her trash bag. "I'm working, Mr. Chen." "Alex," he corrected automatically. "And I'm technically your boss's boss's boss, so I think I can authorize a short break." She couldn't argue with that logic. Reluctantly, she set down her trash bag and followed him to a quiet corner of the cafeteria. "I've been wanting to thank you properly," he said once they were out of earshot, "for your kindness the other night." "It was nothing," Elena said, uncomfortable with his gratitude. "Anyone would have done the same." "No, they wouldn't have," he countered firmly. "Most people would have backed away slowly from the crazy man crying in his office, remember?" Despite herself, Elena smiled at his callback to their conversation. "Well, like I said, you weren't crazy, just sad. Thanks to you, less sad now." He studied her face with that same intense focus she remembered from their first meeting. "I've been reflecting on what you said about your father. It helped more than you know." "I'm glad," Elena said, genuinely pleased that her words had made a difference. A slightly awkward silence fell between them. Elena was hyper-aware of the cleaning uniform she wore, the plastic gloves tucked into her pocket, the curious stares still directed their way. "I should get back to work," she said finally. "Of course." Alex nodded, but made no move to leave. Instead, he pulled a business card from his pocket and handed it to her. "My personal number is on the back. I'd like to take you to dinner as a proper thank you." Elena stared at the card as if it might bite her. "That's really not necessary, Mr. Chen." "Alex," he insisted. "And maybe it's not necessary, but I'd like to. I don't often meet people who see past everything." He gestured vaguely at his suit, at the trappings of wealth and power that surrounded him. Before Elena could formulate a response, a tall woman in a sharp black pantsuit approached them. "Alex, the Nakamura team is waiting in the conference room," she said, her eyes darting curiously between them. "I'll be right there, Vivian," he replied, not taking his eyes off Elena. "Think about it," he added softly before turning to follow his assistant. Elena watched him go, the business card await in her palm. What had just happened? Was Alexander Chen, billionaire CEO, man with the world at his fingertips, asking her on a date? No, she corrected herself, not a date. A thank you dinner. A charity gesture to make himself feel better about his moment of vulnerability? She should throw the card away. Instead, she carefully tucked it into her pocket and returned to her trash collecting, trying to ignore the speculative looks from employees who had witnessed the exchange. By the time her shift ended at 4, the rumor mill was already churning. Elena kept her head down, changed back into her street clothes, and hurried out of the building. The late May air was warm and humid as she walked to the subway station. 3 blocks from Vertex Tower, she pulled out the business card again and examined it. Heavy cream-colored cardstock, embossed with the Vertex logo. Alexander Chen, Chief Executive Officer. On the back, written in precise blue ink, a phone number. This is insane, she muttered to herself, tucking the card away again. She wouldn't call. What would they even talk about? What would be the point? Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Don't forget to pick up my prescription. Reality check. This was her life. Night shifts, community college, caring for her mother. Not fancy dinners with CEOs who probably saw her as some kind of curiosity, a momentary distraction from their privileged existence. The subway was crowded with the early rush of commuters. Elena found a spot to stand, holding the overhead rail as the train lurched forward. Her thoughts drifted back to the night she'd found Alex on his office floor. The raw pain in his eyes had been so genuine, so human. For a brief moment, there had been no hierarchy between them, just 2 people connecting over shared experiences of loss. But daylight had restored the natural order. He was Alexander Chen, and she was the woman who emptied his trash. By the time Elena reached her stop in Queens, she had almost convinced herself to forget the whole thing. She stopped at the pharmacy for her mother's medication, then climbed the 4 flights of stairs to their small apartment. "Mama, I'm home," she called, dropping her keys on the small table by the door. "In here, mija," her mother responded from the living room. Constanza Vasquez sat in her usual spot on the worn sofa, a half-completed quilt spread across her lap despite the warmth of the day. At 56, Connie looked a decade older, her once vibrant face now gaunt, her thick black hair streaked with gray. Multiple sclerosis had ravaged her body over the past 5 years, stealing her career as a seamstress, her independence, and often her spirits, but never her deft hands or creative eye. "How was your shift?" Connie asked, setting aside her quilting to accept the medication Elena handed her. "Fine," Elena replied automatically, then hesitated. Actually, something strange happened. As she recounted her interaction with Alex, leaving out their first encounter at his request, her mother's eyes grew wider. "The CEO knows your name?" Connie exclaimed. "And asked you to dinner?" "It's not like that, Mama. He's just being nice because I helped him with something." "What kind of something?" Connie asked suspiciously. "I can't say, I promised." Elena busied herself with organizing the mail, avoiding her mother's penetrating stare. Connie picked up her quilting again, her nimble fingers resuming their work. "Well, you should go." Elena's head snapped up. "What? No, absolutely not. Why not? When was the last time you did something for yourself, Elena? All you do is work and study and take care of me." "Because those are my responsibilities," Elena countered. "And going to dinner with Alexander Chen it's not even in the realm of possibility. We have nothing in common. Except that you helped him with this mysterious something, and he was moved enough to seek you out and thank you personally." Connie raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like you have at least one thing in common. Humanity." Elena shook her head, exasperated. It would be awkward and uncomfortable. What would we even talk about? "You'll never know if you don't go," her mother replied simply. "Besides, you said it's just a thank you dinner, not a marriage proposal." "Mama, I'm just saying life offers unexpected gifts sometimes. Only a fool refuses to even open them." Elena sighed, knowing that once her mother got an idea in her head, there was no dissuading her. "I'll think about it," she conceded, mainly to end the conversation. But over the next 2 days, as Elena attended her community college classes and worked her regular night shifts, thankfully not on the executive floor, the idea continued to nag at her. She found herself taking out Alex's card, staring at the number, then putting it away again. It was silly. She was being silly. The rational part of her brain knew exactly how this would play out. Best case scenario: an uncomfortable dinner where they struggled to find common ground, followed by relieved goodbyes and a return to their separate worlds. Worst case, she somehow embarrassed herself and then had to live with the mortification while still cleaning his company's offices. Still, by Friday afternoon, as Elena prepared for her night shift, something in her rebelled against the safe, predictable course. Yes, calling him was probably a mistake, but maybe, just maybe, her mother was right. Life rarely offered unexpected gifts to women like her. Was she really going to refuse even the chance to unwrap this one? Before she could talk herself out of it, Elena pulled out her phone and dialed the number on the back of the business card. She half expected it to go to voicemail or to be answered by an assistant. Instead, after 2 rings, she heard his voice. "This is Alex Chen." Elena's heartbeat quickened. "Hi, it's Elena Vasquez, from the other night." A brief pause, then, "Elena, I'm glad you called. Does this mean you'll have dinner with me?" His direct approach took her by surprise. I guess it does. But I should warn you, I don't exactly fit in at the kinds of restaurants someone like you probably goes to." "Someone like me?" She could hear the amusement in his voice. "I eat food, just like everyone else. But point taken. How about you let me worry about the restaurant and you just tell me when you're free?" Elena glanced at her calendar. "I have Monday night off," she said, immediately wondering if she was making a huge mistake. "Monday it is. I'll pick you up at 7? And just like that, Elena Vasquez had a dinner date with the CEO of Vertex Innovations. She gave him her address in a daze, hung up, and stared at her phone, wondering what alternate universe she had just slipped into, and what on earth she was going to wear. Reality has a way of intruding on even the most perfect romance. For Elena and Alex, it came in the form of a glossy magazine. Elena was restocking supplies in her cleaning cart when Sophia rushed up to her, brandishing a copy of New York Business Weekly. "Did you see this?" she demanded, flipping the magazine open to a dog-eared page. There, in full color, was a photo of Elena and Alex at the charity gala they'd attended 2 weeks prior. Her in the midnight blue gown he'd insisted on buying her despite her protests. Him in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, both smiling at each other as if they were the only people in the room. The caption read, "Vertex CEO Alexander Chen with companion Elena Vasquez at the Children's Hospital benefit." Elena's stomach dropped. "Oh no!" "Oh yes," Sophia countered. "You're all over page 6, too. Billionaire's mystery woman. Who is Elena Vasquez?" "He's not a billionaire," Elena said automatically, though she knew that was hardly the point. Sophia rolled her eyes. "That's what you're focusing on? Lena, you're officially tabloid fodder now." Elena snatched the magazine, scanning the rest of the article with growing horror. It was mostly about Alex and Vertex's recent business moves, but there was a paragraph speculating about their relationship, including the devastating line, "Sources close to Chen express skepticism about the unlikely pairing, noting that Vasquez works for the cleaning service contracted by Vertex Tower." "This can't be happening," Elena muttered. "Well, it is," Sophia said, not unkindly. "What did you think would happen? You're dating one of New York's most eligible bachelors. People notice these things." Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Alex. "Have you seen it? I'm so sorry. Can I come over tonight?" She quickly replied, "Yes to both," before turning back to Sophia. This will blow over, right? No one actually cares who Alex dates." Sophia's expression was pitying. "Honey, everyone cares who Alex dates, especially when it's not who they expected." Throughout her shift, Elena felt eyes on her. Whispers followed her from floor to floor. Even people who had never acknowledged her existence before suddenly found reasons to linger near her cleaning cart or study her with newfound curiosity. By the time she got home, Elena was exhausted from the scrutiny. She barely had time to change into jeans and a t-shirt before Alex arrived, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. "I'm so sorry," he said as soon as she opened the door. "I knew there was a photographer at the gala, but I never thought they'd focus on us like this." Elena led him to the couch. "It's okay. It was bound to happen eventually, right?" Alex ran a hand through his hair. "Yes, but I hope to prepare you better. The press can be invasive once they latch onto a story." "Have they been bothering you?" "Nothing I can't handle, but I'm worried about you. And your mother." As if on cue, Connie emerged from her bedroom. "I heard voices." "Ah, Alex, you're here to discuss your newfound celebrity status?" Her tone was teasing, but Elena could see the concern in her eyes. "Something like that," Alex replied with a weak smile. "Mrs. Vasquez, I want to assure you that I'll do everything I can to protect Elena's privacy." Connie waved dismissively. "I'm not worried about that. Elena is stronger than both of us combined. I'm more concerned about what this means for your relationship." "Mama!" Elena protested. "This doesn't change anything." Both Alex and Connie looked at her with identical expressions of fond exasperation. "Of course it changes things, Mija," Connie said gently. "The world now knows about you two, and the world has opinions about everything, especially about who belongs with whom." Alex moved closer to Elena on the couch, taking her hand. "Your mother's right. Things will be different now. But my feelings for you haven't changed." He looked directly at Connie. "I love your daughter, Mrs. Vasquez. I'll do whatever it takes to make this work." Connie studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. Now, I'll leave you two to talk. I have a telenovela to catch up on." She retreated to her bedroom, closing the door firmly behind her. Elena leaned against Alex's shoulder, taking comfort in his solid presence. "So what do we do now?" "We have options," he said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "We could try to keep a lower profile for a while, let the interest die down. Or we could go the opposite direction, make a brief statement, control the narrative. What would we even say? Yes, the billionaire and the cleaning lady are dating, nothing to see here?" Alex winced. "You're not the cleaning lady. You're Elena Vasquez, the most remarkable woman I've ever met, who happens to work for a cleaning service while putting herself through nursing school and caring for her mother." Elena smiled despite herself. "That's a bit long for a press release. The point is we don't have to let them define who you are or what our relationship means." His expression turned serious. "But I also understand if you want to step back. This isn't what you signed up for." The thought of stepping back, of losing what they'd built together, was physically painful. "No," Elena said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere. We'll figure this out." Alex's smile was radiant. "Together," he agreed, leaning in to kiss her, but figuring it out proved harder than either of them anticipated. The following days brought a flurry of attention. Photographers waiting outside her apartment building, emails from reporters requesting interviews, even a few cleaning clients asking her invasive questions about Alex. Elena did her best to ignore it all, but the strain began to show. She jumped at unexpected sounds, constantly checking over her shoulder. Sleep became elusive, and her grades suffered as she struggled to concentrate on her studies. Alex's protective instincts went into overdrive. He hired a security consultant to advise Elena on privacy measures. He called her hourly to check in. He even offered to put her and Connie up in a hotel until the attention died down, an offer Elena firmly declined. "We're not going to run away from our home," she told him. "This is temporary. They'll lose interest eventually." But as days turned into a week, and then 2, the attention showed no signs of abating. If anything, it intensified as more details of their relationship emerged. Someone at Vertex leaked the story of how they met. Alex's breakdown in his office, Elena's comforting presence. The narrative took on a fairy tale quality in the press. Beauty saves Beast. How a cleaning lady rescued a CEO from despair. Alex was furious when he saw the headlines. "I'm going to find whoever leaked that story and make them regret it," he vowed, pacing Elena's small living room. "Alex, stop. Getting angry won't help." Elena was tired, having just finished a double shift. Besides, it could have been anyone. A security guard, another cleaner who saw us talking that night. "It's an invasion of privacy," he insisted. "Our story is ours, not fodder for gossip columns." The strain was beginning to show on him as well. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usual calm demeanor had given way to irritability. Board members were questioning his focus. Clients were asking about his personal life instead of their projects. Even his long-estranged mother had called from California, curious about the woman who had tamed her son. The situation came to a head 3 weeks after the first magazine article appeared. Elena was studying for a crucial anatomy exam when Alex called, his voice tight with barely contained emotion. "We need to talk. Can I come over?" Something in his tone sent a chill through her. "What's wrong?" "Not over the phone. I'll be there in 30 minutes. The half-hour wait was excruciating. Elena paced her apartment, sick with dread. When Alex finally knocked, she nearly yanked the door off its hinges. One look at his face confirmed her worst fears. He looked devastated. "What happened?" she demanded, pulling him inside. Alex ran both hands through his hair, a gesture she now recognized as a sign of extreme stress. "The board called an emergency meeting today. They're concerned about the company's image, about my judgment and focus." He practically spat the words. "Apparently, my relationship choices are affecting investor confidence." Elena's heart sank. "Because of me?" "No," Alex said fiercely. "Because they're stuck in the last century, obsessed with appearance over substance." He took a deep breath. "But there's more. Someone leaked your personnel file to the press, your address, your work history, everything." Horror washed over her. How is that even possible? "I don't know yet, but I promise you I'll find out." His expression was murderous. "In the meantime, I've arranged for private security for you and your mother. Alex, we can't afford—" "I'm paying for it," he interrupted. "This isn't up for debate, Elena. My relationship with you has put you at risk. I have to protect you." The implication of his words hit her like a bucket of cold water. "Your relationship with me," she repeated. "Is that what we're calling it now?" Alex looked confused. "What are you talking about? You keep saying you need to protect me, like I'm some helpless damsel who can't handle difficult situations. I've been handling difficult situations my entire life, Alex, without security details or emergency board meetings or any of the resources you take for granted." "That's not fair," he protested. "I'm trying to help." "Are you? Or are you trying to manage a problem? Is that what I am now? A problem that's affecting investor confidence?" The fear and stress of the past weeks crystallized into a sharp anger. "Of course not. How can you even think that?" "Because everything since that damn article has been about damage control. Your reputation, your company, your board's concerns. When do we talk about us? About whether what we have is strong enough to withstand this kind of pressure?" Alex looked stricken. "I thought that was a given." "I love you, Elena." "Love isn't always enough," she said, hating the words even as they left her mouth. "Not when the whole world seems determined to remind us how different our lives are." "So what are you saying?" His voice was barely above a whisper. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. "I don't know. Maybe we need to take a step back. Give ourselves space to think clearly." Is that what you want? The vulnerability in his eyes nearly broke her. No, she admitted. What I want is for none of this to be happening. I want to go back to when it was just us, figuring things out together, without the whole world watching and judging. Alex moved toward her, gathering her hands in his. We can still have that, Elena. We just need to weather this storm. It will pass, I promise. She wanted desperately to believe him, but the doubt had taken root, feeding on her deepest insecurities. And what if it doesn't? What if this is just the beginning of all the ways the world will try to tell us we don't belong together? Then we prove them wrong. His voice was steady, certain. Every day, in every way possible, we show them that what we have is real, that it matters more than their expectations or prejudices. Elena looked into his eyes, searching for doubt, for hesitation. She found none, only unwavering determination. It won't be easy, she warned. Nothing worth having ever is. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she might disappear. I'm not giving up on us, Elena. Not for the board, not for public opinion, not for anything. She clung to him, desperately wanting to share his certainty. But as she closed her eyes, resting her head against his chest, a voice in the back of her mind whispered that the hardest tests were yet to come. The promised security detail arrived the next morning, a discreet but unmistakable presence outside Elena's apartment building. She felt a complicated mix of gratitude and resentment every time she passed the professionally bland man in the sedan parked across the street. Alex was true to his word. He didn't back down from their relationship, didn't try to hide it or minimize it in the face of corporate pressure. If anything, he became more steadfast, more determined to prove that they belonged together despite their different backgrounds. He issued a brief statement to the press, acknowledging their relationship while firmly requesting privacy. When a particularly vicious gossip column suggested Elena was a gold digger who had strategically positioned herself to catch his attention, Alex personally called the editor and threatened legal action unless they printed a retraction and apology. But the strain continued to build. Elena was forced to take a leave of absence from her cleaning job at Vertex Tower after other employees complained about the awkwardness of her dating their boss. The cleaning company offered her placement at a different building, but the schedule conflicted with her classes. I'll support you financially until you finish school, Alex offered when she told him. They were having dinner at his penthouse, the Manhattan skyline glittering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Absolutely not, Elena replied immediately. I've been taking care of myself since I was 17. I'm not about to become dependent on anyone, not even you. It's not dependency, it's support. Partners support each other. With what I bring to the table? What exactly am I supporting you with, Alex? The question came out sharper than she intended, laced with all her insecurities. Alex set down his fork, his expression serious. Perspective, balance, reminding me that there's a world outside boardrooms and balance sheets, not to mention emotional intelligence that half my executive team lacks. His voice softened. You've made me a better CEO, Elena, and a better person. The sincerity in his eyes melted her resistance. That's sweet, but it doesn't pay the bills. What if... Alex hesitated, then forged ahead. What if I create a scholarship for working students? Not just for you, for anyone in your situation. You would qualify legitimately, and it would help others too. Elena considered the proposal. It was a generous compromise, one that spoke to his understanding of her pride. I'd have to apply like everyone else? No special treatment? Absolutely, though I might recuse myself from the selection committee, he added with a small smile. I could live with that, Elena conceded. But I'm still going to find another job. Part-time, at least. Alex knew better than to argue. Instead, he reached across the table and took her hand. Have I told you lately how remarkable you are? Not in the last hour or so, she teased, the tension between them easing. It was moments like these, intimate, honest, partnership in its purest form, that reinforced Elena's belief in their relationship. Despite the external pressures, despite the differences in their backgrounds and resources, they understood each other in ways that mattered. The scholarship program came together with impressive speed, a testament to Alex's influence and determination. By the end of the month, Elena had applied and been accepted, allowing her to reduce her work hours and focus more on her studies. She found a weekend position at a local hospital, working as a nursing assistant. Better experience for her future career anyway, she reasoned. The media frenzy gradually died down as promised, though Elena still occasionally spotted photographers when she was with Alex. She learned to ignore them, to focus instead on the man beside her rather than the lenses pointed their way. As summer turned to fall, they settled into a new rhythm. Elena spent most weeknights at her own apartment with her mother, focusing on her increasingly demanding coursework. Weekends were often spent at Alex's penthouse, where they could enjoy privacy and comfort. He became a regular at Sunday family dinners with Connie, who treated him like the son she'd never had. On the surface, they had weathered the storm, but subtle changes had taken root. Elena noticed how Alex sometimes censored himself around her, downplaying work conflicts or financial decisions as if afraid to remind her of the disparity between them. She found herself doing the same, minimizing struggles with bills or school stresses, not wanting him to offer solutions she was too proud to accept. These small fractures might have remained manageable if not for Vivian Lee. Alex's executive assistant had always been coolly professional during Elena's limited interactions with her. But as Alex's relationship with Elena deepened, Vivian's thinly veiled disapproval became increasingly apparent. It came to a head at Vertex's annual Autumn Gala, a lavish affair held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Elena had agonized over her outfit, eventually settling on a burgundy gown, another gift from Alex, though she'd insisted on choosing something relatively modest from a department store rather than a designer boutique. The evening started well enough. Alex proudly introduced Elena to business associates, board members, and industry peers. Most were polite, if sometimes condescending, asking questions that revealed their preconceptions about her background and education. Elena was at the bar taking a much-needed break from the social obstacle course when Vivian approached. "You clean up nicely," Vivian said, her tone making it clear the double meaning was intentional. Elena forced a smile. "Thank you. You look lovely as well." Vivian accepted the compliment with a regal nod. Her black designer gown probably cost more than 6 months of Elena's rent. "I've been wanting to speak with you privately," she continued. "About Alex." Warning bells rang in Elena's mind. "Oh? He's not himself lately, distracted, missing meetings, making impulsive decisions." Vivian's perfectly made-up eyes bore into Elena's. "The board is concerned. The Chen legacy is at stake. If the board has concerns, perhaps they should speak to Alex directly," Elena suggested, keeping her voice level. "I'm trying to give you the courtesy of a private conversation," Vivian replied, "before things become more official." "What exactly are you implying?" Vivian sipped her champagne, the picture of sophisticated nonchalance. "Alex is at a critical juncture in his career. His father built this company from nothing. Everything Chen Wei achieved, all the barriers he broke as an immigrant, the legacy he created for his son. It's Alex's responsibility now. He can't afford distractions." "And I'm a distraction?" Elena clarified, anger building behind her calm exterior. "You're a lovely girl, I'm sure," Vivian said, the condescension in her voice unmistakable. "But you must see how this looks, how it affects shareholder confidence, client relationships, Alex's standing in the business community." "How what looks exactly?" Elena challenged. "The CEO of a Fortune 500 company dating a domestic worker. It raises questions about his judgment." The word stung despite Elena's attempts to armor herself against exactly this kind of snobbery. "I'm a nursing student who happens to work in cleaning to pay my bills," she corrected, "and Alex's judgment seems perfectly sound to me." For now, perhaps, but as the initial excitement wears off, reality will set in. Vivian lowered her voice. I've worked with Alex for 7 years. I've seen his relationships come and go. He has a pattern, becoming intensely fascinated with women who are different, interesting, a breath of fresh air compared to his usual social circle. But it never lasts. Elena fought to keep her expression neutral, though she felt as if she'd been slapped. Thank you for your concern, she managed. But my relationship with Alex is none of your business. Vertex is my business, Vivian countered, and Alex's well-being, both personal and professional, is integral to Vertex's success. She set down her empty glass. Just something to think about, if you truly care about him. With that parting shot, she glided away, leaving Elena shaken. She wanted to dismiss Vivian's words as jealousy or corporate snobbery, but they had touched on her deepest insecurities. Was she just a passing fascination for Alex? A temporary rebellion against his father's legacy and his expected path? Elena was still processing the encounter when Alex found her, his face lighting up at the sight of her. There you are, he said, pressing a kiss to her temple. I was looking for you. The Japan team finally arrived and I'd love for you to meet them. Elena forced a smile. Of course. He started to lead her back toward the main hall, then paused, studying her face. Everything okay? You seem upset. I'm fine, she lied, just a little overwhelmed by all this. She gestured to the opulent surroundings. Alex frowned slightly, not entirely convinced, but nodded. We can leave early if you want. This part is mostly just for show anyway. The fact that he would skip his own company's gala for her sake only twisted the knife deeper. No, really, I'm fine, she insisted. Let's go meet your Japanese clients. The rest of the evening passed in a blur as Elena went through the motions of socializing, all while Vivian's words echoed in her mind. She caught the assistant watching her several times, her expression a mix of satisfaction and calculation. Later that night, as they returned to Alex's penthouse, Elena was uncharacteristically quiet. She kicked off her heels and went straight to the balcony, needing fresh air and space to think. Alex followed, standing beside her as they looked out over the city. Are you going to tell me what's really bothering you? He asked gently. Elena sighed, knowing she couldn't keep it bottled up. I had an interesting conversation with Vivian tonight. His posture immediately stiffened. What did she say to you? Basically that I'm a passing phase, a distraction from your real responsibilities, that you have a pattern of being fascinated by women who are different until the novelty wears off. Alex's expression darkened. That's completely inappropriate. She had no right. Is it true? Elena interrupted, turning to face him directly. The pattern, I mean. He hesitated just a fraction too long before answering. It's not that simple. But there's some truth to it? Alex ran a hand through his hair, messing up its perfect styling. I've dated outside my social circle before, yes. And those relationships didn't last. But none of them were you, Elena. How am I different? She hated the vulnerability in her question, but needed to hear his answer. Because I love you, he said simply. I've never said those words to anyone else. Never meant them. Never even knew what they meant until you. Elena wanted desperately to believe him, but doubt, once planted, is difficult to uproot. Vivian seems to think I'm jeopardizing your father's legacy, that the board is concerned about your focus because of me. Vivian needs to mind her own business, Alex said sharply. And as for my father's legacy, maybe it's time I defined that for myself instead of letting others dictate what it should be. What does that mean? Alex took her hands in his. It means that I'm tired of living my life according to other people's expectations. My father's, the board's, the business community's. I've spent my entire adult life trying to be the perfect son, the perfect CEO, following a script written by someone else. His eyes were intense, almost feverish. You've helped me see that there's more to life than that. that I deserve happiness on my own terms." The raw emotion in his voice nearly undid her. "Alex, I don't want to come between you and your responsibilities." "You're not. You're helping me understand what those responsibilities really are, to myself, to the people I love, not just to a corporate bottom line." He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "Don't let Vivian or anyone else make you doubt what we have, Elena. It's real. It's the most real thing in my life." Elena melted into his embrace, letting his certainty wash over her doubts. But as she closed her eyes, Vivian's words still lingered at the edges of her consciousness, a shadow she couldn't quite banish. The Vertex Innovations holiday party was legendary in corporate circles, an extravagant celebration held at the Plaza Hotel with no expense spared. Live entertainment, gourmet food stations, an open bar featuring rare spirits, ice sculptures, and a guest list that read like a who's who of Manhattan power players. Alex had been looking forward to introducing Elena to this side of his world, proudly showing her off to everyone who mattered in his professional sphere. But as the date approached, Elena found herself increasingly anxious about attending. "What if I use the wrong fork?" she half-joked to Sophia during a rare afternoon coffee date. "Or say something that makes him look bad in front of important people?" Sophia rolled her eyes. "You've been to fancy events with him before. The Met Gala, that charity auction. What's different about this one?" Elena stirred her latte, considering. "This is his company. These are the people he works with every day, his father's old colleagues, people who knew him as a child. It just feels higher stakes somehow." "You're overthinking it," Sophia insisted. "Alex loves you exactly as you are. He's not expecting you to suddenly transform into some society princess." But the doubt lingered, especially after Elena overheard Alex on the phone with a board member, reassuring them that Elena understands the importance of making a good impression. It was a harmless comment, she knew, but combined with Vivian's warnings and her own insecurities, it took root in her mind. The night of the party, Elena spent hours getting ready, grateful that her mother's skills with a needle had transformed a basic black dress into something that looked almost designer with strategic alterations and carefully placed beading. She'd splurged on professional hairstyling and watched YouTube tutorials to perfect her makeup. When Alex arrived to pick her up, his appreciative whistle confirmed her efforts had paid off. "You look absolutely stunning," he said, spinning her gently to admire the full effect. Connie, watching from her armchair, beamed with pride. "Doesn't she? My talented daughter." "The dress is beautiful too, Mrs. Vasquez," Alex added, recognizing Connie's handiwork. "You have remarkable skill." "Flattery will get you everywhere, young man," Connie replied with a wink. "Now take my daughter to your fancy party and show all those corporate types what real class looks like." In the car, Elena was uncharacteristically quiet, mentally rehearsing appropriate small talk and reminding herself of table etiquette rules she'd frantically Googled the night before. Alex reached over and took her hand. "You know you don't have to be nervous, right? Everyone's going to love you." "I just want to make a good impression," Elena said. "These people are important to you." "You're what's important to me," he corrected. "This is just a party. Have fun, be yourself, and if anyone makes you uncomfortable, we'll leave." The plaza was transformed for the occasion, its already opulent ballroom enhanced with thousands of twinkling lights, massive floral arrangements, and subtle Vertex branding. A string quartet played in one corner, while waiters circulated with champagne and canapes. Elena took a deep breath as they entered, squeezing Alex's hand for reassurance. He smiled down at her, his gray eyes warm with affection, and for a moment, her anxiety receded. Whatever happened tonight, she had this man who somehow saw past all their differences to love her completely. The first hour went surprisingly well. Alex kept her by his side as he made the rounds, introducing her to colleagues and clients who were, for the most part, polite and welcoming. Elena found herself relaxing as she realized she could handle the small talk and social niceties required. "Alex, there you are!" A booming voice interrupted their conversation with a software developer. Elena turned to see an older Asian man approaching, his arms outstretched. "I've been looking all over for you, boy." Alex's face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Uncle James, I didn't know you were back from Singapore." The men embraced warmly before Alex turned to Elena. "Elena, this is James Lee, my father's oldest friend, and my unofficial uncle. Uncle James, this is Elena Vasquez, my girlfriend." James studied her with keen eyes that missed nothing. "So you're the one who's been making our boy smile again," he said, taking her hand in both of his. "It's a pleasure to meet you, young lady." "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Lee," Elena replied, immediately warming to his genuine manner. "James, please. Mr. Lee was my father, and even he preferred James." He turned back to Alex. The boards gathered in the small reception room. "Victor says there's something urgent to discuss." Alex frowned. "Tonight? It's a holiday party." James shrugged apologetically. "You know Victor. Any opportunity to assert his authority? He says it can't wait." Elena could see the frustration in Alex's expression. "You should go," she encouraged. "I'll be fine mingling for a while." "Are you sure?" Alex asked. "I can tell them to wait." "Absolutely." She put on her most confident smile. "Go handle your board. I'll be right here when you're done." Alex kissed her cheek. "I'll be as quick as I can. Find me if you need anything." As he walked away with James, Elena felt a momentary pang of anxiety at being left alone, but she squared her shoulders and headed toward the bar for another glass of champagne. She was a grown woman, perfectly capable of navigating a party by herself for a few minutes. "All alone?" a familiar voice inquired as she waited for her drink. "Alex does have a habit of prioritizing business, doesn't he?" Elena turned to find Vivian beside her, resplendent in a sleek silver gown that probably cost more than Elena's entire wardrobe. "It's a work function," Elena replied evenly. "I'd be worried if he didn't take his responsibilities seriously." Vivian murmured, accepting a martini from the bartender. "You're very understanding. But then, you'd have to be. Dating someone like Alex." "Someone like Alex?" Elena repeated, her tone carefully neutral despite the warning bells ringing in her head. "Someone whose life belongs more to his company, his legacy, than to himself." Vivian took a delicate sip of her drink. "It's the burden of greatness, I suppose, always having to consider the bigger picture." Before Elena could formulate a response, they were joined by a striking woman with expertly styled silver hair and a regal bearing. "Vivian, darling, I've been looking everywhere for you," the woman said, air-kissing Vivian's cheek. Her gaze fell on Elena with undisguised curiosity. "And who is your friend?" "Eleanor, this is Elena Vasquez," Vivian introduced, a subtle emphasis on Elena's last name. "Alex Chen's girlfriend. Elena, this is Eleanor Whitfield. Her husband sits on our board." Recognition flickered in Eleanor's eyes. "Ah, yes, the cleaning girl, how fascinating." Elena's spine stiffened. "Nursing student, actually?" she corrected. "The cleaning was to pay the bills." "How resourceful," Eleanor replied with a condescending smile. "And now you found an even better way to pay those bills, haven't you?" The implication was unmistakable. Elena felt heat rising to her cheeks. "Excuse me?" "Oh, don't be coy, dear. We all understand the arrangement. Alex gets his little walk on the wild side, a charming story to tell at dinner parties someday, and you get, well, whatever he's giving you. Everyone wins." Vivian had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, though she made no move to contradict Eleanor's assessment. Elena set down her champagne glass with deliberate care, afraid she might otherwise throw it in the woman's face. "Mrs. Whitfield, I appreciate your candor, but you fundamentally misunderstand my relationship with Alex." "Do I?" Eleanor raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. Perhaps you're the one who misunderstands, dear. Men like Alex Chen, powerful, wealthy, with family legacies to uphold, they may play at rebellion, but they ultimately marry women who enhance their position, not complicate it. She patted Eleanor's arm condescendingly. Enjoy it while it lasts. That's my advice. With that parting shot, Eleanor glided away, leaving Elena stunned and Vivian looking almost sympathetic. She's harsh, but not entirely wrong, Vivian said softly. Alex's father always expected him to marry someone who could be a true partner in every sense, socially, professionally. And you don't think I qualify, Elena stated flatly. Vivian shrugged elegantly. It's not a judgment on your character. It's simply a reality of the world Alex inhabits. Would you truly be comfortable at bored wives' luncheons, charity foundation meetings, business trips to Beijing and London? She sipped her martini. Marriage isn't just about love. At this level, it's a strategic partnership. Elena wanted to argue, to defend herself and her relationship with Alex, but the words stuck in her throat because a small, insidious part of her feared Vivian might be right. Could she really fit into Alex's world long-term? Would she always feel like an imposter, one wrong move away from embarrassing him? I need some air, she murmured, turning away from Vivian and heading toward the terrace doors. The December night was bitingly cold, but Elena welcomed it, letting the chill clear her head. She stood at the stone balustrade, looking out over the twinkling lights of Central Park, trying to steady her breathing and push away the doubt that threatened to overwhelm her. There you are. Alex's voice came from behind her. I've been looking everywhere. The meeting ran longer than expected. I'm sorry. Elena turned to face him, forcing a smile. It's fine. I was just getting some fresh air. Alex frowned, studying her face. What's wrong? And don't say nothing. I know you too well. Elena hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. I had an interesting conversation with Eleanor Whitfield. Alex's expression darkened. What did she say to you? Nothing I haven't heard before. That I'm your walk on the wild side. That men like you play at rebellion, but ultimately marry women who enhance their position. Elena couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. Apparently, I should enjoy it while it lasts. That's outrageous, Alex growled. I'm going to… What? Confront a board member's wife at your company holiday party? Elena shook her head. That would only prove her point, that I'm a complication in your perfectly ordered life. You're not a complication, Alex insisted, taking her hands in his. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Am I? Elena pulled away, the doubts she'd been suppressing finally breaking free. Or am I just a novelty? A temporary escape from the weight of your responsibilities? The anti-debutante who makes you feel rebellious and authentic for a while? Alex looked genuinely hurt. How can you ask me that? After everything we've shared, everything I've told you about how I feel. Because maybe Vivian's right, Elena admitted, voicing her deepest fear. Maybe love isn't enough. Not when you have family legacies and corporate empires and societal expectations to consider. I don't care about any of that, Alex declared fiercely. I care about you, about us. But you should care, Elena argued. Your father built something incredible from nothing. You have a responsibility to protect that, to build on it. And maybe part of that responsibility is… She couldn't finish the sentence. Is what? Marrying someone the board approves of? Someone who knows the right fork to use and the right people to schmooze? Alex's voice rose with frustration. That's not the legacy I want to uphold. My father fought against people telling him what he could and couldn't do his entire life. He wouldn't want me to let others dictate my happiness. Elena wanted desperately to believe him, but the seed of doubt had been planted too deep, nurtured by her own insecurities and the steady drip of society's judgment. I just don't want to be the reason you lose something that matters to you, she said quietly. Alex stepped closer, cupping her face in his hands. Then stop trying to push me away, he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Because you matter to me, Elena, more than anything." Before she could respond, the terrace doors opened and a group of partygoers spilled out, laughing and talking loudly. The intimate moment shattered, leaving Elena and Alex staring at each other, the tension between them unresolved. "We should go back inside," Elena said, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold. "People will wonder where you've gone." Alex looked like he wanted to argue, to finish their conversation here and now, but he nodded reluctantly. "We'll talk more later," he promised, offering his arm. As they rejoined the party, Elena smiled and made small talk and played the role of the devoted girlfriend. But inside, a wall had begun to form, one built of doubt, fear, and the growing certainty that despite their love for each other, their worlds might be too far apart to ever truly bridge. The conversation they'd promised to have later never really happened. Christmas was approaching, bringing with it a whirlwind of holiday commitments for both of them. Alex was swamped with year-end business matters, while Elena juggled final exams, her hospital shifts, and increased care for her mother, whose MS symptoms always worsened in cold weather. They saw each other when they could, exchanged texts and calls when they couldn't, but the unspoken tension from the holiday party lingered between them like a third presence in every room. Alex was more attentive than ever, showering Elena with thoughtful gifts and reassurances. Elena responded with genuine affection, but couldn't quite shake the feeling that they were performing for each other, both trying to prove that their relationship could survive the doubts that had taken root. 2 days before Christmas, Alex insisted on taking Elena shopping for a proper winter coat. "The one you have is practically threadbare," he'd argued when she protested. "It's not about the money, it's about you not freezing to death on your hospital rounds." Elena had reluctantly agreed, and they'd spent a pleasant afternoon at Bergdorf Goodman. She'd tried to steer him toward the more reasonably priced options, but Alex had been drawn to a stunning camel-colored cashmere coat with leather trim. When Elena saw the price tag, nearly $4,000, she'd immediately put it back on the rack. "That's ridiculous," she'd whispered. "I could pay 2 months' rent for that." "But it looked beautiful on you," Alex had countered, "and it would last for years." "Alex, no one in my world spends that kind of money on a coat. I'd be afraid to wear it." He'd looked genuinely perplexed. "What's the point of having money if I can't share it with the people I love?" They'd compromised on a still expensive but less ostentatious wool blend coat that Elena truly loved and felt comfortable wearing. But the incident had highlighted yet another chasm between their worlds. Alex's casual relationship with money versus Elena's lifetime of careful budgeting and sacrifice. On Christmas Eve, they exchanged gifts at Elena's apartment. Alex had scaled back his original plans at Elena's insistence, presenting her with a pair of simple gold earrings rather than the diamond studs he'd initially chosen. Elena had agonized over what to give him. What do you get for the man who can buy himself anything? Before deciding on something personal. A hand-knit scarf made by Connie, paired with a collection of candid photographs Elena had taken of him over their months together, beautifully framed. "These are perfect," Alex had said, his fingers tracing one image of himself laughing on the Staten Island ferry, hair wind-blown, looking younger and more carefree than in any of his formal business photographs. "You see me? The real me?" The moment had been perfect, a reminder of the genuine connection that had drawn them together in the first place. But even then, a small voice in the back of Elena's mind whispered that it couldn't last, that the real world would eventually intrude on their carefully constructed bubble. That intrusion came faster than she expected, in the form of a phone call on New Year's Eve. They were preparing for a quiet celebration at Alex's penthouse, takeout from their favorite restaurants, champagne, and watching the ball drop from the comfort of his living room rather than braving the Times Square crowds. Elena was setting the table when Alex's phone rang. She knew something was wrong from the way his expression changed as he looked at the caller ID. "It's my mother," he said, sounding surprised. "I should take this." Elena nodded, continuing her task while trying not to eavesdrop on his half of the conversation. But it was impossible not to notice how Alex's posture stiffened, how his voice took on a formal quality she rarely heard when they were alone. "Yes, I understand. No, that wasn't the plan. I'm actually spending the evening with someone. My girlfriend, yes." He glanced at Elena, his expression unreadable. "I see. Let me call you back in a few minutes." He ended the call and stood still for a moment, staring at his phone as if it might bite him. "Everything okay?" Elena asked cautiously. Alex ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she now recognized as a sign of stress. "That was my mother. She's in New York, unexpectedly, at the plaza. Wants me to join her for their New Year's gala." "Oh." Elena tried to keep her voice neutral. "You should go. I know you don't see her often." "She wants me to bring you," he added, still not meeting her eyes. Elena set down the plates she was holding. "Me? But she doesn't even know me. Apparently she's been following the press coverage. She's curious." The word hung in the air between them, loaded with implications. Curious, like Elena was some exotic specimen to be examined. "And what did you tell her?" "That I'd call her back." Alex finally looked at her, his expression troubled. "I don't want to push you into an uncomfortable situation. My mother can be difficult." "More difficult than Eleanor Whitfield?" Elena attempted a joke, though it fell flat. Alex didn't smile. "Differently difficult. Eleanor is openly snobbish. My mother is more subtly devastating." "Sounds delightful," Elena muttered. "We don't have to go," Alex said quickly. "We can stick to our original plan. I'll tell her I've already made commitments." Part of Elena wanted desperately to take the out he was offering, to stay in their safe bubble for one more night, postponing the inevitable scrutiny of yet another person from Alex's world. But a stronger part of her was tired of hiding, of being the secret that Alex's real life needed to be protected from. "No," she decided firmly. "We should go. She's your mother, and she wants to meet me. That's significant." Alex looked both relieved and apprehensive. "Are you sure? The Plaza Gala is extremely high profile. Lots of society people, press coverage." "I'm sure," Elena said more confidently than she felt. "I have that new dress from Christmas." Connie had outdone herself this year, transforming a simple blue silk dress with intricate beadwork that made it look far more expensive than it was. "You'll be the most beautiful woman there," Alex said, pulling her into his arms. "Thank you for doing this. I know it's not how you wanted to spend New Year's Eve." Elena rested her head against his chest, taking comfort in his solid presence. "I want to be part of your life, Alex. All of it, not just the easy parts." 3 hours later, as they stepped into the plaza's grand ballroom, Elena was grateful for those brave words. They were like armor against the curious stares and whispered comments that followed them through the crowd. The New Year's gala was even more opulent than the Vertex holiday party had been. Crystal chandeliers dripping with silver and gold decorations, ice sculptures, a full orchestra, women dripping in diamonds, and men in bespoke tuxedos. Alex kept his hand at the small of her back, a constant reassuring presence as he guided her through the throng. "She said she'd be near the champagne fountain," he murmured close to her ear. They found Lillian Chen holding court among a group of rapt listeners, a flute of champagne in one manicured hand. At 62, she remained strikingly beautiful, her slender figure showcased in a designer gown, her dark hair styled in an elegant updo with just enough silver to look distinguished rather than aged. When she spotted Alex, she gracefully extracted herself from her admirers and glided toward them. "Alexander, darling," she said, air-kissing both his cheeks in a distinctly European fashion. "How wonderful to see you." "Mother," Alex replied, his tone warming slightly despite the formal address. "You look well. California must agree with you. The sun does wonders for one's complexion." Lillian's gaze shifted to Elena, assessing her with the precision of a jeweler examining a stone for flaws. And this must be the young woman I've heard so much about. Elena Vasquez, Alex confirmed, a subtle note of pride in his voice. Elena, my mother, Lillian Chen. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Chen, Elena said, extending her hand. Lillian took it briefly, her grip cool and dry. Likewise, I'm sure. Though I go by Ms. Porter now, I return to my maiden name after the divorce. Of course. I apologize, Elena said, mentally kicking herself for the error. No need, you couldn't have known. Lillian's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Alexander has always been rather reticent about family matters. An awkward silence fell, which Lillian broke by linking her arm through Alex's. Darling, I simply must introduce you to Grayson Hughes. He's considering a major investment in tech startups next quarter. Elena, you don't mind if I borrow my son for a moment, do you? Before either Alex or Elena could protest, Lillian was steering him away, leaving Elena standing alone. She watched them go, noting how easily Alex slipped back into his society persona, back straightening, expression becoming more guarded, gestures more contained. Elena made her way to the bar, ordering a glass of champagne to steady her nerves. She could handle being temporarily abandoned. It wasn't the first time she'd been left to her own devices at one of these events. What unsettled her more was watching Alex with his mother, seeing the complex dynamic between them, the way he simultaneously resisted and yielded to her influence. You must be Elena, a voice said beside her. She turned to find a distinguished-looking older man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. I'm James Lee. We met briefly at the Vertex party. Elena relaxed slightly, recognizing Alex's uncle from their previous encounter. Yes, I remember. It's nice to see you again. I see Lillian has already whisked Alex away, James observed, nodding toward where mother and son were deep in conversation with a silver-haired man in an expensive tuxedo. Some things never change. Did she do that a lot? When Alex was growing up? James chuckled. Lillian always had an agenda, even when she was just Chen Wei's ambitious young wife, always pushing, networking, orchestrating the right introductions. His expression softened with nostalgia. She was an excellent corporate spouse in many ways, helped Wei navigate American high society, which wasn't easy for a Chinese immigrant in those days, no matter how brilliant or successful. But she left, Elena said, watching Lillian's animated gestures as she spoke to the potential investor. When Alex was 8? Yes, James confirmed, his tone more somber. The pressure got to her, I think. Wei was driven, demanding. The company always came first. Lillian wanted more freedom, more recognition as her own person. He sipped his drink. The irony is that after the divorce, she became exactly what she'd resisted, a society figure defined primarily by her association with Chen Wei's wealth and success. Elena considered this information, seeing Alex's complicated relationship with his mother in a new light. Why is she here now? She and Alex don't seem particularly close. James studied her appraisingly. You're quite direct, aren't you? I like that. He glanced toward the Chen family tableau. I suspect she's here because of you, my dear. The press coverage of your relationship with Alex has been substantial. Lillian has always been keenly interested in anything that might affect the Chen family reputation. I see, Elena said, though the knot in her stomach suggested she understood all too well. So she's here to assess the damage. I wouldn't put it quite so bluntly, but James shrugged eloquently. Lillian has definite ideas about the kind of life Alex should lead, the kind of partner he should have. Elena took a larger sip of champagne than she'd intended. And I'm not it. I didn't say that, James corrected gently. What matters is what Alex thinks. And having known that boy since he was in diapers, I can tell you I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Before Elena could respond, Alex returned, looking slightly harried. I'm sorry about that, he said, taking her hand. Mother can be persistent. It's fine, Elena assured him, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. James has been keeping me company. Uncle James is the only truly decent person in this entire room, Alex said with a fond smile at the older man. Where is Mother now? Making the rounds, James replied. She mentioned something about catching up with you both later. Wonderful, Alex muttered, not sounding thrilled at the prospect. Well, since we have a temporary reprieve, would you care to dance, Ms. Vasquez? He offered Elena his arm with a formal bow that made her laugh despite her unease. I would be delighted, Mr. Chen. As they moved onto the dance floor, Alex pulled her close, his hand warm against her back. I'm sorry about my mother, he murmured against her hair. She's complicated. So I gather, Elena replied, resting her head against his shoulder. James was filling me in on some of the Chen family history. Oh? And what pearls of wisdom did Uncle James share? That your mother left because she felt constrained by your father's ambitions. That she wanted her own identity. Alex was quiet for a moment as they swayed to the music. That's part of it, he finally said. The simplified version. The reality was messier. There was another man. A friend who convinced her she deserved more than being Chen Wei's wife and Alex's mother. His voice held a bitterness Elena had rarely heard from him. She chose him, chose her freedom, left us both behind to start a new life in California. Elena tightened her arms around him, hearing the echo of abandonment in his words. I'm sorry. Ancient history, Alex said, though his tense posture suggested otherwise. The point is, whatever she says to you tonight, and she will find a way to talk to you alone, remember that her opinions come from her own agenda, not from any real knowledge of what makes me happy. As the orchestra transitioned to a new song, Elena looked up at Alex, struck by the vulnerability beneath his confident exterior. And what does make you happy, Alex Chen? His gray eyes softened as they met hers. You do, he said simply. More than I ever thought possible. In that moment, with the music swelling around them and Alex looking at her as if she were the only person in the room, Elena almost believed they could overcome anything. Family disapproval, social differences, their own insecurities. Almost. The confrontation Elena had been dreading came shortly before midnight, as the gala attendees began gathering in anticipation of the countdown. Alex had been pulled into a conversation with a major client, and Elena had excused herself to find the ladies' room. She was touching up her lipstick when Lillian Porter entered, her timing so perfect it couldn't possibly be coincidental. Their eyes met in the mirror, and Lillian smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. I was hoping to catch a moment alone with you, Lillian said, opening her clutch to retrieve her own lipstick. Mother to potential daughter-in-law chats are so important, don't you think? Elena's heart skipped a beat at the implication. Alex and I haven't discussed marriage, she said carefully. Perhaps not explicitly, Lillian conceded, applying a fresh coat of deep red to her lips. But I know my son. He has that look, the same one his father had when we first met. The Chen men fall hard and fast. She snapped her clutch closed. It's why I felt compelled to come to New York, to meet the woman who's captured Alex's heart so completely. And now that you've met me? Elena asked, facing her directly. What's your assessment? Lillian's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose slightly at Elena's directness. You're certainly not what I expected. There's a groundedness to you that I can see would appeal to Alex. He's always been searching for something authentic, even as a child. It wasn't quite the criticism Elena had braced for, which made her all the more wary. But the world Alex inhabits isn't simple or straightforward, Lillian continued, her tone shifting to something more earnest. It's built on appearances, connections, strategic relationships. The Chen name carries weight, expectations, responsibilities. Alex has fought against that his entire life, but it's inescapable. I'm well aware of the expectations surrounding Alex, Elena replied. I've had plenty of people making sure I understand how unsuitable I am. I didn't say you were unsuitable, Lillian corrected. I said it's complicated. There's a difference. She leaned against the marble countertop, studying Elena with surprising intensity. May I be blunt with you, Elena? I'd prefer it, actually. Very well. I'm not concerned that you're not good enough for my son. I'm concerned that a relationship with him will crush the very qualities that make you special. Of all the things Elena had expected Lillian to say, this wasn't on the list. I don't understand. You have an identity separate from Alex, a purpose, goals, a life built through your own determination. Do you know how rare that is in his world? Lillian's expression held a hint of something that might have been regret. I was 22 when I married Chen Wei, bright, ambitious, with dreams of my own. Within 5 years, I was nothing but Mrs. Chen, the CEO's wife, Alex's mother. My entire existence defined by my relationship to the Chen men. Elena found herself unexpectedly moved by Lillian's candor. Is that why you left? Partly, Lillian acknowledged. I needed to find out who I was beyond those roles. It was selfish, leaving Alex. I know that. It's the one regret I'll carry to my grave. She straightened, her moment of vulnerability passing. But we're not discussing my failings as a mother. We're discussing your future with my son. And you think being with Alex will… what, make me lose myself? I think it's a significant risk, Lillian replied. The Chen world consumes people, Elena, especially women. You'll be expected to serve as Alex's partner in every sense. Hostess, confidant, strategic ally. Your nursing career? It will become a charming anecdote about your humble beginnings. Your independence? A quaint memory. You're assuming I'd let that happen, Elena countered, though doubt crept in around the edges of her certainty. Everyone thinks they're the exception, Lillian said softly. I certainly did. She glanced at her diamond watch. Nearly midnight. We should rejoin the party. They exited the restroom together. An uneasy alliance formed through their unexpected moment of honesty. Alex was waiting nearby, his expression clearing with relief when he spotted them. There you are, he said, coming to Elena's side and eyeing his mother with thinly veiled suspicion. Everything okay? Perfectly fine, Lillian assured him. Just getting to know your lovely girlfriend a bit better. Alex didn't look convinced, but the room-wide countdown was beginning, leaving no time for further discussion. 10, 9, 8. Alex pulled Elena close, his eyes searching hers. You sure you're all right? 7, 6, 5. I'm fine, she insisted, forcing a smile. Really? 4, 3, 2, 1, Happy New Year! As cheers erupted around them, Alex leaned down and kissed her deeply. Elena closed her eyes, trying to lose herself in the moment, to push away the doubts that Lillian's words had stirred. When they broke apart, Alex was smiling at her with such open adoration that her heart ached. Happy New Year, he murmured against her lips, the first of many together. Over his shoulder, Elena caught Lillian's gaze, knowing, almost sympathetic. She looked away, clinging to Alex as if he could shield her from the choice looming on her horizon. The drive back to Alex's penthouse was mostly silent, both of them tired from the evening's emotional undertow. But as they prepared for bed, Elena knew she couldn't let the night end without addressing what had happened. Your mother didn't say what I expected, she admitted, sitting on the edge of Alex's enormous bed. He paused in the middle of removing his cufflinks. What did she say? That she's worried I'll lose myself if I commit to a life with you, that the Chen world will consume me, turn me into nothing but an extension of you. Alex's expression darkened. That's rich, coming from her. But is she wrong? Elena pressed, needing his honesty more than his reassurance. Look at the last few months, Alex. I've already changed so much of my life to accommodate yours. I left my job at Vertex. I spend less time with my friends, less time on my studies. I'm constantly thrust into situations where I feel out of place, unprepared. I never meant to change your life, he said, sitting beside her and taking her hands. I just wanted to be part of it. I know, Elena said softly, and I want that too. But it's not that simple, is it? Your world comes with expectations, demands. Every time I attend one of these events, every time I meet another person who looks at me like I'm some curiosity you've decided to collect, I lose a little piece of the person I was before I met you. You're the strongest person I know, Alex countered. You're not going to be subsumed by my world or my family name. Maybe not, Elena acknowledged. But I'm starting to think there's no version of this relationship where we both get to be fully ourselves. One of us will always have to bend, to compromise, and so far, that's been me. Alex was quiet for a long moment, absorbing her words. You're right, he finally said. I've been asking you to adapt to my life without being willing to make significant changes to my own. He turned to face her fully. So let's change that. Let's find a way forward that works for both of us. How? I don't know exactly, he admitted, but we can figure it out together. Maybe I step back from some of my social obligations. Maybe we spend more time in your world instead of mine. Maybe... He broke off, running a hand through his hair. Maybe I've been too attached to my role as Chen Wei's son, too afraid of disappointing his ghost to consider what would truly make me happy. The raw honesty in his voice made Elena's chest tighten. What would make you happy, Alex? You, he said simply. A life with you. However that looks. Elena wanted desperately to believe him, but Lillian's words echoed in her mind, along with all the doubts and fears that had been accumulating since their relationship first became public. We should get some sleep, she said, unable to find adequate words for the storm of emotions swirling inside her. It's been a long night. Alex nodded, though disappointment flickered across his face at her deflection. They completed their nighttime routines in companionable silence, and Elena curled against him in the darkness, finding comfort in his solid warmth despite her troubled thoughts. The next week passed in a blur of normalcy, or what had become their version of it. Alex returned to his demanding work schedule, preparing for a major product launch. Elena resumed her classes and hospital shifts. They saw each other when they could, texted when they couldn't, maintained the outward appearance of a couple working through the typical challenges of balancing busy lives. But something had shifted. Elena found herself watching Alex more carefully, noting the subtle ways he changed in different contexts, the corporate warrior in business settings, the charming society figure at events, the relaxed, playful man in private moments with her. She wondered which version was the real Alex, or if perhaps they all were, facets of a complex person shaped by extraordinary circumstances. She also became more aware of her own adaptations, how she modulated her speech in his world, edited her stories to omit details that might emphasize their different backgrounds, even adjusted her body language to project a confidence she often didn't feel. Were these natural compromises that any couple made, or warning signs of a fundamental incompatibility they'd been avoiding confronting? The answer came on a snowy evening in late January. Alex had invited Elena to accompany him to a business dinner with a delegation of potential investors from South Korea. Initially, she'd declined, citing a major exam the following day, but Alex had been unusually insistent. These investors are old-fashioned, he'd explained. They respect family values, tradition. Having my partner there would send a strong message about stability, commitment. So you want me there as a prop? Elena had asked, trying to keep the edge from her voice. Of course not, Alex had protested. I want you there because you're important to me, and this deal is important to me. I thought you'd want to support me. The subtle guilt trip had worked. Elena had rearranged her study schedule and borrowed yet another dress from a growing collection of business dinner-appropriate outfits she'd accumulated since meeting Alex. The dinner itself was perfectly pleasant. The Korean businessmen were courteous, their wives gracious if reserved. Elena smiled and made appropriate small talk and nodded supportively at all the right moments. She was, by all appearances, the perfect corporate partner, and she hated every minute of it. Not because the people were unpleasant or the conversation boring, but because she recognized with sudden, piercing clarity that this wasn't who she wanted to be. Playing a role, modifying herself to fit someone else's expectations, setting aside her own priorities to advance Alex's interests. It was exactly what Lillian had warned her about. When they returned to Alex's penthouse, he was elated. "That couldn't have gone better," he enthused, loosening his tie as they entered the foyer. "Mr. Park practically committed to the investment on the spot. And did you see how Mrs. Park warmed up to you? That was—" He stopped, noticing Elena's expression. "What's wrong?" Elena took a deep breath, knowing what she had to say would change everything. "I can't do this anymore, Alex." His smile faded. "Do what?" "Pretend that I belong in your world. Pretend that I'm not compromising who I am every time I step into it." She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the apartment. "I love you, but I don't think love is enough to bridge our differences." Alex stared at her, his face a mask of disbelief. "You don't mean that." "I do," Elena said, tears beginning to spill down her cheeks. "Tonight made it so clear. You needed me there as the supportive girlfriend, helping you close a business deal. And I did it, because I love you and want you to succeed. But it's not who I am, Alex. It's not the life I want." "So what are you saying?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "That we're too different? That we can't make this work?" Elena wiped at her tears, determined to be honest with him, even if it broke both their hearts. "I'm saying that I need to figure out who I am, separate from you and your world. And I don't think I can do that while we're together." The devastation on Alex's face nearly broke her resolve. "Elena, please. We can work through this. I'll make changes, You shouldn't have to," she interrupted gently. "And that's the problem. I don't want you to change who you are or what matters to you. And I can't keep changing myself to fit into your life." Alex moved toward her, desperation in his eyes. "So we'll find a middle ground. There has to be a way." "Maybe there is," Elena conceded. "But I need space to figure out if that's what I truly want. If I can be with you without losing myself in the process." "You're breaking up with me," he stated flatly, the reality finally sinking in. "I'm asking for time," she corrected, though they both knew it amounted to the same thing. Time to be sure that what we feel for each other is enough to overcome everything else. Alex stood frozen, his face a study in grief and disbelief. Then slowly, he nodded. "If that's what you need." Elena reached for him, pressing a tearful kiss to his cheek. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you." "I know," he replied, his voice hollow. She gathered her things and left without looking back, knowing that if she saw his face again, her determination might crumble. As the elevator descended from the penthouse to the ground floor, Elena leaned against the wall and allowed the tears to flow freely. She had just walked away from the man she loved, the man who had seen her, valued her, cherished her, like no one else ever had, and she had no idea if she would ever find the courage to walk back to him. February passed in a blur of gray skies and relentless snow, a perfect match for Elena's emotional landscape. She threw herself into her studies and hospital shifts, working double when she could, as if physical exhaustion might dull the ache of Alex's absence. She ignored Sophia's concerned glances and her mother's gentle inquiries, offering only the barest explanation for the breakup. We wanted different things. It wasn't entirely a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. The whole truth was that Elena missed Alex with an intensity that frightened her, missed his laugh, his unwavering support, the way he looked at her as if she were a miracle he couldn't quite believe was real. She checked her phone obsessively the first week, hoping to see his name on her screen. But Alex respected her request for space, maintaining radio silence that was both a relief and a fresh wound. "You know, Mija, sometimes the hardest part of loving someone is allowing them to be who they truly are," Connie said one evening as they sat working on a quilt together, an activity Elena had taken up again to fill her empty hours. "Even when that person isn't what you expected." Elena looked up from her careful stitching. "Is that what happened with you and Dad?" Connie's eyes softened with old memories. "Your father and I were from different worlds too. His family never approved of me, the poor girl from the wrong side of town. They had plans for him, expectations." She smoothed a square of fabric with aged fingers. "We fought for our love, but it wasn't easy. There were compromises, sacrifices on both sides." "Do you ever regret it?" Elena asked. "The sacrifices you made?" "Not for a moment," Connie replied without hesitation. "Because they were my choices, freely made. That's the key, Elena. Not that you never change or adapt for love, but that you do it by choice with your eyes open, knowing who you are and what matters to you." The wisdom of her mother's words followed Elena through the weeks that stretched into March. She began to see her relationship with Alex in a new light, not as a choice between preserving herself or loving him, but as a challenge to do both simultaneously. To find a way to be Elena Vasquez, future nurse, daughter, friend, while also being the woman who loved Alexander Chen. Meanwhile, across town, Alex was undergoing his own painful evolution. The first week after Elena left, he'd buried himself in work, staying at the office until the early hours, avoiding his empty penthouse with its memories of her laughter, her warmth, her presence. It was James who finally intervened, physically removing Alex from his office one night at 11. "This has to stop," the older man said firmly, as they sat in a quiet bar. "You look like hell, and from what I hear, you're making everyone at Vertex miserable." "I'm fine," Alex insisted, though the shadows under his eyes and the weight he'd lost told a different story. "You're not," James countered, "and you know it. What you need to decide is what you're going to do about it." "She asked for space," Alex said, staring into his untouched scotch. "I'm respecting that. And when has Alexander Chen ever just accepted defeat? When has he ever not fought for what matters to him?" James leaned forward. "Your father wouldn't have—" "I'm not my father," Alex snapped. James sat back, a small smile playing at his lips. "No, you're not, and thank God for that. Wei was brilliant, driven, a force of nature, but he never understood that some things are more important than success or legacy or what other people think." He placed a weathered hand on Alex's shoulder. "Don't make his mistakes, son." The conversation marked a turning point. Alex began to reevaluate not just his relationship with Elena, but his whole life. The expectations he'd internalized, the legacy he felt obligated to uphold, the compromises he'd been unwilling to make. He made changes, small at first, then more significant. He delegated more responsibility at work. He declined invitations to social events that held no genuine interest for him. He had long, difficult conversations with board members about his vision for Vertex's future, a vision that prioritized social responsibility alongside profitability. Some approved, others didn't. Alex found he cared less about their opinions than he once had. Most significantly, he began volunteering at a community center in Queens, teaching basic computer skills to immigrants and seniors. It was nothing like the high-profile charity work he'd done in the past. No galas, no press coverage, no networking opportunities. Just Alex, a classroom of eager learners, and the satisfaction of making a tangible difference in individual lives. It was there, on a chilly Friday evening in early April, that Elena found him. She hadn't planned it. She'd been picking up a prescription for her mother at the pharmacy next door when she'd glanced through the community center's windows and seen him, sleeves rolled up, patiently helping an elderly woman navigate a keyboard. Elena stood frozen on the sidewalk, her heart pounding. He looked different, thinner, with his hair slightly longer and less perfectly styled. But what struck her most was his expression, relaxed, genuinely engaged, without the weight of Chen Wei's legacy visibly pressing down on him. Before she could decide whether to approach him or slip away unnoticed, Alex looked up. Their eyes met through the glass, and the world seemed to still around them. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Alex excused himself to his student and walked to the door, stepping outside to where Elena stood. "Hi," he said simply, his voice carrying a tentative hope that made her chest ache. "Hi," she replied, suddenly tongue-tied. I didn't know you'd be here. I volunteer on Fridays, teaching basic computer skills." He gestured toward the classroom. "It's not changing the world, but it's changing their worlds," Elena finished for him. "That matters." Alex nodded, a small smile touching his lips. "I'm learning that." An awkward silence fell between them, 3 months of separation creating a chasm neither quite knew how to bridge. "You look good," Alex said finally. "So do you," Elena replied, though it wasn't entirely true. He looked tired, leaner, but also somehow more at peace. "Happy, I mean. I'm getting there," he acknowledged, making some changes. Elena nodded, unsure what else to say. Part of her wanted to throw herself into his arms, to tell him how much she'd missed him, how often she'd thought of calling, but another part, the part that had needed this separation, held her back. They had important things to resolve before they could move forward, if moving forward was even possible. "I should let you get back to your class," she said. "We're almost done for the day," Alex replied quickly. Would you like to get coffee? Or take a walk? The park's nice this time of evening." Elena hesitated, then nodded. A walk would be good. 20 minutes later, they strolled side by side through a local park, the early spring air crisp but not uncomfortably cold. They talked cautiously at first, about Elena's classes, Alex's work, neutral topics that didn't touch on their separation or the reasons behind it. But as the pathway curved around a small pond, Alex stopped walking and turned to face her directly. "I've missed you," he said simply. "Every day." The raw honesty in his voice broke through Elena's carefully maintained defenses. "I've missed you too," she admitted. "These past months without you, they've been the hardest of my life," Alex continued, "but also the most clarifying." He took a deep breath. "You were right to leave, Elena. We were headed down a path that would have destroyed what makes us special, both individually and together." Elena was surprised by his perspective. "I thought you'd be angry with me." "I was, at first," he acknowledged. "Then hurt. Then just determined to understand where we went wrong and whether it could be fixed." He gestured toward a nearby bench. "Can we sit? There's a lot I want to say to you." They settled on the bench, a careful few inches between them. Alex turned slightly to face her, his expression more open and vulnerable than she'd ever seen it. "I've spent my entire life trying to live up to my father's legacy," he began, "to be the son he wanted, the CEO he envisioned, to make his sacrifices worthwhile. I never questioned whether that was the life I wanted for myself." His eyes met hers. "Until I met you." Elena listened quietly, sensing he needed to say these things without interruption. "You showed me a different way of moving through the world, with purpose, integrity, and deep personal connection. You weren't impressed by my money or my position. You saw me when I was at my lowest, and still found something worth caring about." He smiled faintly. "That night in my office, you offered me water and perspective when anyone else would have backed away from the crazy crying man." The memory brought a small smile to Elena's face as well. "I remember thinking you weren't crazy, just sad." "You were right," Alex said softly. I was sad. I'd been sad for a long time without even realizing it, living someone else's idea of a successful life. He reached for her hand, tentatively, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She didn't. These months without you have been hard, but necessary. I've made changes, Elena. Real ones. Not just for show or to win you back. What kind of changes? She asked, hope cautiously unfurling in her chest. I've stepped back from some of my social obligations. Delegated more at work. Set boundaries with the board about my personal life. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I've been volunteering here, living more simply, figuring out what truly matters to me apart from the Chen name and all it represents. And what does matter to you? Elena asked softly. You, he said without hesitation. But not at the expense of your identity or happiness. I don't want you to change who you are to fit into my world. I want to build a new world with you, one that honors both of us, exactly as we are. Tears pricked at Elena's eyes. I've been doing some thinking too, she admitted, about what I can and can't compromise on, about the difference between adapting and losing myself. She squeezed his hand. I don't mind attending business dinners or charity events sometimes. I don't mind learning about your world. I just need space for my own goals too. My education, my career, my family. That's exactly what I want for you, Alex assured her. Your strength, your independence, your dedication to others, that's who you are. That's who I fell in love with. He slid off the bench then, to her surprise, dropping to one knee on the pathway before her. From his pocket, he produced not a jeweler's box as she might have expected, but a simple key. Elena Vasquez, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. I'm not asking you to marry me, not yet. We have more growing to do, individually and together, before we're ready for that step. Confusion mixed with relief in Elena's expression. Then what? I'm asking you to share a home with me, Alex explained. Not my penthouse, not your apartment with your mother, but a new place. Something that belongs to both of us, that we choose together, that represents the life we want to build. He held up the key. This is just a symbol. We'll find the actual place together. But I want you to have a physical reminder of my commitment to finding middle ground. Elena stared at the key, then at Alex's hopeful face. In this moment, he wasn't Alexander Chen, billionaire CEO. He was simply Alex, the man she'd found crying alone in an empty office, the man who'd seen her value when others overlooked her, the man who was now humbling himself on a public pathway to offer not a diamond, but a promise of partnership. People are staring, she whispered, noticing the curious onlookers who had stopped to watch what they assumed was a proposal. Let them, Alex replied. I'm done caring what other people think about my choices, as long as those choices lead me to you. His expression grew more serious. What do you say, Elena? Will you try again with me? Build something new together? Elena looked at the man kneeling before her. This complex, evolving, imperfect human who had turned his life upside down not just to win her back, but to become a truer version of himself. And she knew her answer with absolute certainty. Yes, she said, taking the key and pulling him to his feet. Yes, I will. Their lips met in a kiss that felt both familiar and entirely new, a beginning rather than a resumption, a promise of what could be rather than what had been. Around them, the small crowd of strangers broke into applause, assuming they'd witnessed a traditional proposal. Elena and Alex broke apart, laughing, but didn't bother to correct them. Some stories were too complex, too personal to be understood by outsiders. What mattered was that they understood each other, their differences, their needs, their shared vision for a future neither of them could have imagined that night months ago when a cleaning lady had found a man sobbing alone in the dark. I love you, Alex whispered against her hair as he held her close. Exactly as you are. And I love you, Elena replied, exactly as you're becoming. In the gathering dusk of a Queen's Park, Surrounded by strangers but finally truly seeing each other, they began again. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.